LCD Soundsystem sprung from fear. Let me explain. You see, in the early 2000s, New York was going through a rock renaissance. Interpol, The Strokes, and the Yeah Yeah Yeahs were just starting out. But they were all very nostalgic for New York's past, resembling bands like the Ramones, Talking Heads, and the Velvet Underground. And by no means did that take away from any of these acts, but a young James Murphy saw it as simply following tradition. He dreamed of a different New York, one where the sounds clashed, new musical styles originated, and the people danced. Murphy sought to reinvent New York's legacy, but he didn't know where to begin. Murphy was quickly approaching 30, he couldn't sing that well, nor did he look the part of a frontman. James Murphy had gone to college for English, but dropped out to pursue music. He was offered a writing job on Seinfeld, but didn't respond because he really wanted to pursue music. But by the time he had reached his late 20s, he wasn't living that dream of being a rock star. His life wasn't what he had expected. Murphy had been so afraid of failure and of creating something awful that he did nothing. Fed up with himself, he turned to a therapist in the hopes of changing his mindset. It worked, and he soon realized he was being pathetic, that he only had this one life to get it right, so he got started. He began as a sound engineer for local bands until an Englishman by the name of Tim Goldsworthy came to town, looking to make a dance record. At that time, Murphy could care less about dance music, but him and Goldsworthy shared a similar outlook on New York's music scene. They began hosting and DJing their own parties in New York to earn some extra cash, but mostly for the lifestyle. These Great Gatsby-esque events had Murphy behind the turntable and out on the dance floor between bumps of ecstasy and coke. He was gaining notoriety as one of New York's coolest DJs, melding rock tracks with dance music, attracting a new kind of scene while discovering a sound of his very own. The pair soon started their own label, DFA, with Jonathan Galkin. Murphy began hearing DJs playing his mixes at parties. The dance rock theme was his thing, and he started feeling that he might soon be out of a job and that these younger DJs would render him obsolete. That fear and frustration led to his first single, Losing My Edge.
I'm losing my edge, but I was there.
He began poking fun at himself and those like him, the record store hipsters who were spinning Daft Punk records before Daft Punk blew up. His ironic yet sincere songwriting, coupled with his off-the-cuff vocal delivery and intriguing dance rock sound, caught the world's attention. He was tapped to produce music for Janet Jackson and Britney Spears, but neither of those worked out. He remixed a few songs, produced a couple more singles, leaving fans eager for a full-length release. In 2005, Murphy answered those prayers with a self-titled LCD Soundsystem.
Daft Punk is playing at my house, my house.
Murphy wasn't trying to cater to an audience. He focused on making good music inspired by the music he loved. And it was celebrated for reworking the sounds of the 70s and 80s. You'll hear nods to the Beatles, Prince, New Order, Brian Eno, The Fall, and a whole bunch more. Frankensteining together his favorite records into a new monster. Murphy had something here. It was retro but fresh, and more importantly, it was bringing indie rockers and the club crowd together. The album was even nominated for a Grammy for Best Electronic Dance Album against some of Murphy's heroes like Daft Punk, Kraftwerk, and winners the Chemical Brothers. It was a strong debut, something Murphy could have been proud of. But he felt his debut sounded too woody, having recorded it in a barn. He returned to that same wooden studio for his sophomore, but covered the entire space in silver fabric and tinfoil, hoping to inject some of that shine into the music. It worked. Sound of Silver outshined their debut in almost every way.
I wish that we could talk about it, but that's the problem.
The production is much more varied, the songwriting more personal, and Murphy's charisma is off the wall. These 9 tracks are woven together so well, creating the perfect balance of rock and disco, showcasing how flexible the two can be. The album was dedicated to Dr. George Kamen, Murphy's longtime therapist. Remember the one that helped Murphy overcome his fears all those years ago? He passed away during the recording of the album, and is the someone mentioned in the track Someone Great. The album is filled with personal notes from Murphy on his fleeting youth, relationships, and death. It began to depress him, but luckily Nike approached him to create a 45-minute exercise track for iTunes. It allowed Murphy to step away from the album, a much-needed break before finishing the other half of one of the best albums of that decade. If you're looking for a place to start with LCD Soundsystem, Sound of Silver is it. Shortly after, James Murphy jumped right back into studio, this time recording in a mansion. He wrote half of the album and, again, stepped away from it. But to do a few film scores, he fought with himself in finishing the record. He had spent so much time with it that it was just driving him mad. When he was finally satisfied with what he had, he released This Is Happening.
But I can change, 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 I can change.
It was great disco funk punk rock with a little more melody than the last release. It solidified Murphy as a powerhouse producer who just keeps bringing the beats and wearing his heart on his sleeve. There's the obvious David Bowie and Talking Heads references, and the opening track, Dance Yourself Clean, is a masterwork. The first time I heard it, I almost needed to wipe myself clean. If you have yet to hear this song, go check it out and turn it up a little bit because you're really going to want to hear what Murphy's saying in those first couple minutes. During the production and release of this album, there were rumors of LCD Soundsystem closing up shop, that they were going to leave it at 3 fantastic albums and make off with their winnings. James sadly confirmed those rumors in early 2011. Murphy felt he had exhausted all he had to say by this point. He feared their growth and popularity would have him lose interest and that he wouldn't have it in him to create another good record. And they made it a big deal. They put on a final show at a sold-out Madison Square Garden, capping off a year-long tour. It was a 4-hour spectacle featuring Arcade Fire and a few others, and they even filmed a documentary showcasing the band's last 48 hours, and eventually popped out a live album for it too. It was the perfect bittersweet goodbye to a band that was just beginning to make it big. Murphy took this time to help out Arcade Fire with some production on their dance-heavy album Reflector. He produced Yeah Yeah Yeah's album Mosquito, and was meant to produce David Bowie's last offering Black Star, but those plans fell through. However, his time with Bowie wasn't wasted. Murphy was wrestling with the discomfort of reuniting LCD Soundsystem, and he mentioned it to Bowie. The rock legend told James to jump into whatever made him uncomfortable, and so he did. LCD Soundsystem reunited in 2016. A short-lived hiatus, whether it had just been for the money, or simply that Murphy just had some really good ideas. Most fans were happy that LCD Soundsystem wasn't really over. After a year of touring the festival circuit and a few delays, American Dream was released. Murphy aged a full 7 years leading to American Dream, and those anxious notions of getting older and eventual death is a recurring theme. Bowie had passed the year before, the American political landscape was, and still is, a mess, leaving plenty for Murphy to sing about. The album sounds mature in comparison to past releases, darker as well. And that sense of urgency took a backseat to a more laxed collection of tracks. It's a strong addition to their discography, by no means their best, but they set their own bar pretty damn high. It was, however, LCD Soundsystem's first #1 record, something Murphy had been chasing for a while. LCD Soundsystem is the story of a man who was afraid of failing, so he did nothing until he started fearing that nothing was all he was ever going to do and be. Thankfully, he found that drive to push forward and finally create. I think if we can learn something from James Murphy, it's that fear will always follow us when we have something to lose. And we all have something to lose, our time here on this earth. But much like Murphy realized, it's more pathetic to do nothing than to not chase your dream. Thanks for watching, ladies and gents. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a like rating, subscribe to learn more about the music you love, and if you'd like to snag yourself a Middle 8 beanie, I've only got about 5 of them, head over to patreon.com/middle8. Patreon is an easy way to help support this channel, and my patrons get put in the credits, early access to videos, and even pick which artists I cover in future videos. There's a link in the description below. So, thank you again for the tremendous support, and tell me, what's your favorite LCD Soundsystem track? Let me know in the comments below, and keep listening.